Hey everyone, Brandon with Flyin Miata back for another FM Live. Apologies for the delay. The list of things that I'd like to talk about today was bigger than we thought. So we are going to talk about product updates. So here at FM, we are always trying to improve. We're always looking for perfection, and we are not perfect, much like everyone else, but we certainly try, and we try to get as close to that as possible. So we're going to go through a bunch of products that have gone through some different iterations and that we've improved along the way. So let's start. We're just going to go down the line here. So the big obvious thing here is our Stage 2 brushless fan. And this one is basically, we used to have a Stage 2 fan. It had two brushed fan motors on. It was really pretty similar to our current Stage 1. And this is an example of us basically taking advantage of new technology that comes around and making it fit as well as possible. So we had our Stage 3 fan. That was awesome. It had two slightly smaller brushless fans. It was awesome, but it was pretty expensive and it was difficult to fit. So we did this, which is a nice middle ground, pretty easy, still snug, but pretty easy to fit and works phenomenally well. Intelligent control, it only spins as fast as it needs to. Soft start, we have videos on it if you want all the nitty gritty details, but the short version is it is excellent, excellent, excellent. It's kind of our go-to. Another one is our crossflow radiator here. So back, oh boy, a very long time ago, we've had issues with turbo Miatas overheating, and we basically wanted a better way to exchange all that heat. And there are a bunch of videos on this. So whatever, I spent a lot of time sweating in the dyno to get the best possible design, but we ended up with it, which was a crossflow, so coolant this way, very dense on the tube and fin count. But even once we had settled on the crossflow, we didn't stop. You know, we had a manufacturer that did a good job, but it was expensive, and the quality was good, but not as good as it could have been. So we changed to a new supplier, brought the price down and the quality up, and made a few other tweaks at the same time, like putting the radiator cap right on top of the tank, so it's super easy and fast to fill. Little stuff like that. So moving on, so our muffler for the ND exhaust, or excuse me, for the ND cars, has a valve in it, and the valve allows you to basically control the sound of your car and the behavior of, again, I'm just going to apply a blanket. There are videos for all of this stuff, so if you want more details, ask in the questions or check out those other videos. But the short version is there's a relay, or there's an extra option for can control, so you can control it via your wiper. Stock, yes, that sounds weird, check out that video. And this allows you to, originally it was a wire in, so you had to cut wires, you had to splice wires together. Not the end of the world, but a little bit of a headache, and can be intimidating for people who aren't familiar or comfortable with wiring. So now, and this is actually a pretty new one, now we have this plug-in set up right here. So this end plugs into your OBD2 plug on your car. You actually remove it from the dashboard. You slip this back into the dashboard, so it still works just like normal. But it has this pigtail here that allows us to plug in our fancy relay right there. And then you don't even have to get power for it, or you don't have to wire in power, because you have this right here that plugs into the fuse panel in the car. You have to splice one wire because it has to go through the firewall into a solenoid, which is very easy and is not touching any factory wiring whatsoever. So that was a good one. Another recent one, door bushings. So we had been selling our 3D printed door bushings for a long time. We sold a bunch of them. They're great. They work really, really well. But we moved into new, for us anyway, manufacturing methods, which is injection molding. So by doing that, we were able to halve the price of them, and also fun colors. So in addition to the black, we now have blue and red. And these are actually even better and stronger than the original guys. So sometimes products, something outside of our control will happen, and the product is no longer available. The Randalls are actually a good example of that. The original designer retired can't really fault them for that. But all of a sudden the supply of Randalls dried up. It didn't exist anymore. So we decided to take that as an opportunity to reinvent the product. So we moved from a stiff, rigid tube that it worked well, it was sexy and it was light, but it was pretty difficult to install, to a formed silicone hose. This is the NB version, this is the NA version. But basically, these guys are super duper easy to install. They're crazy durable. You can fold them into whatever place you want. And this bolts to the firewall to keep leaves and such out. Anyway, again, other videos, details. What is really nice about these, way more durable, far easier to install. They are a third of the price of the original Randall, but then by the time you put inflation into it, I bet it's like a tenth of the price. That's probably an exaggeration, but it's a huge price difference on these guys. We have a bunch of tools, and we also want to make the tools as good as possible. So this is one, it's an oil filter drain funnel. If you have an NA or an NB with a 1.8, or without a 1.8, I suppose, when you do an oil change, you loosen that oil filter and it just pees all down the side of the block. There are things you can do to kind of sort of catch it, but not really. This one works really well to catch it perfectly. So the original design was very good, but we tweaked it a little bit by working with the original designer, because this is a U-design part, to make it a little bit better. We have a little hole here so you can hang it on your pegboard. It is deeper right here, so if you've got a stack, an oil thermostat, whatever, you have a deeper throat there, and then it's a better fit. And since we happen to have an engine right here, we'll show you. So it just clips on to the stock oil cooler, nice and securely, like that. So when you take your oil filter off, it pees into this funnel, down this hose, into your drain pan, no mess. Very, very easy, works really, really well. More tool updates. So this is the original jack adapter. I'm quite frankly a little amazed that we still have this. But this basically makes it so that you're lifting the car by the body instead of the seam where all the metal comes together. So that's why there's this gap here. This worked really well, but it's metal. It's a little more likely to damage the car, I guess, scratching paint and whatever else. So it's okay, but we moved to polyurethane. So this allows us to have a big slot in here for that seam in case yours is kind of abused, but it also has a pretty tight slot so that you can just press it up into place and it'll hold itself there if your seams are still in good shape. Very, very durable, lasts forever. I'm pretty sure we halved the price on this as well, but that was a long time ago, so don't take my word for it. More tools, the Ninja tool. So the Ninja tool is this is to do timing belts. So you've got a cam gear here, cam gear here. This slides in between, and it makes sure that both of the cams are properly aligned. So it makes it just much easier to put everything in place, put the timing belt back on, and to make sure, again, that nothing slips in the process. So this is the original one. I think this is like original because it looks like maybe we didn't get the design completely right and we had to grind off the extra teeth. But then we corrected it, and this is what we sold for a long time. And then, this worked pretty well, and it has a bottle opener on it, so that's fun. But it's so thin that it has a tendency to kind of cant sideways in there and can get a little fuzzy and kind of a headache that way. So with our 3D printing facilities, we moved and made it out of 3D printed. Basically, this is a carbon fiber infused nylon, but we gave it some depth. So now it can't slide sideways. It's going to stay solid in there. And that worked really well. But then we realized we could improve it more. So if we made this stronger, then we could make it so that you could tighten and loosen if the bolts were tightened to a factory spec and not by a monkey with an impact. But you could tighten and loosen the bolts if we made this burly enough, And if we extended it enough, we could put little marks in there. So this is the current version. It's much longer. It has these supports. Kyle got kind of had a lot of fun with the design on this one. But these supports are there on purpose. So it's to help it prevent it from collapsing when you tighten or loosen those bolts. So this one is very strong. It has those marks right there, which line up with the marks in your cam gears. So there's no question whether you have it lined up right or not. E and an I, which line up with the E on the intake cam gear and the I on the exhaust cam gear. If you have questions about that, ask or check out videos, because yes, that is correct. And one of the complaints that we get is that people have trouble getting it in because it's such a tight fit, which is important to keep everything lined up properly. So it's a little bit of a tight fit to get in between your cam gears. So we put a pretty heavy bevel on the back side of that, which is one of the beautiful things about 3D printing. We just have a lot of flexibility there. But basically that helps you get it in, kind of wiggle it in between the cam gears perfectly right there. Let's see, let's talk about turbo kits. So if you've seen any of my other turbo videos, you will know that I am a very big fan of custom formed silicone hoses. They're extremely durable. They make fitment very good. They make installation very good. They last forever. And it's awesome all the way around. This is a good example of an update that we did there. So this used to be on our original, depending on how far back you go, but our original turbo kits, this was a silicone elbow, and then there was a steel piece right here that had these in there. And by these, I mean it had a piece that you could couple the blow-off valve onto over here, and over here, it just had a nub that stuck out, and then you had to reuse your stock hose. It worked, but it was a little clumsy. But now this is all custom formed. You don't have to reuse anything. It's, again, crazy durable. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And this one had the original one. Well, no, because we use a silicone elbow here. So this one had one hose clamp here, one hose clamp here, two hose clamps here, two hose clamps here, and now it has 1, 2, 3, and that's it. So by doing that, we cut down on the potential failure points, which is another really big benefit. If you get a hose clamp wrong, a hose clamp fails, whatever, the fewer of those you have, the lesser the likelihood is of that failing. So we also have more turbo parts here. So our outlets right here, pretty similar. It's been this way for, not forever, but for a long time. But one of the things that we discovered is that we actually, originally we had a divider in there to divide the main turbo exhaust from the wastegate exhaust. And we discovered that that was actually not necessary. And that was hurting us a little bit in terms of power and spool. So we got rid of that, and we kind of beveled the inside of it to make it as clean for flow as possible. And we have that. We also basically completely revamped our manifold. So we've done this for the 1.6 and the 1.8 manifold. The difference here is dramatic. And if you have an old manifold, which we have one over there, so you can see this manifold is fine. It works fine. It's very durable. This manifold is 4.5 pounds lighter, I think. And the 1.6 lost quite a bit of weight, and the manifold and the outlet together shed 6 pounds from new to old. This one is 24% more efficient, so we did run CFD, computational fluid dynamics, on this to get the best possible flow out of it, and I think it looks pretty awesome as well. One of the other nice things is that it is backwards compatible. So if you have an old manifold and it fails, which is pretty unlikely, but or you want to upgrade or whatever else, we will eventually, I promise, sell you just the manifold. Another update that we actually did these are newish. Another update that we did a long time ago. So we originally used stainless steel studs between the turbo and the outlet, or excuse me, between the manifold and the turbo. And fairly normal locking hardware. And honestly, most people were fine with that, but some people did have an issue with that, and they would have hardware failures. So we updated it, and this is all standard in our current turbo kits. So these studs are custom made for us by ARP. They are Inconel 718, and they are to a very specific dimension. So the shoulder, the shoulder is the correct width for the turbo flange, for the turbine flange. The threads are rolled, it's symmetrical, so you don't have to worry about which side is which. Very, very, very strong. And it much more closely matches the thermal expansion of cast iron than stainless steel does, because one of the problems is with stainless steel, as things heat up, everything grows, but your manifold grows at a different rate than your stud, and that can tear it apart. These aren't perfectly matched, but they're much, much closer, and this material is wildly stronger. We also moved to stage 8 nuts. So these are really pretty simple. It's just a nut that has a groove in there. And then a tab here that slips on there. And then an E-clip that holds it in place. So what that means is that once you have it installed, say my turbine housing is here, and I'm going to set it up like this, so that in order for the nut to loosen, it has to actually push past this little tab, which basically isn't going to happen. So that keeps the nuts from backing off. Okay, more stuff. I hope you guys are sticking with me. We update a lot of things. We really try to stay on top of it, and there are a bunch of things that didn't make the cut because we didn't want this to be a 3-hour video. So one of the other big things was a butterfly brace. So the butterfly brace has been around for a long time. The original version has, it's all sheet metal, and that's where the name came from, because that one looks much more like a butterfly. But there's a piece here, there's a big centerpiece, and there's a piece here, and it's all folded sheet metal. It works well. It made a big difference to how stiff the car was, but exhaust was kind of a headache to get in and out, to get proper clearance, and it got very, very expensive. So, no one was buying it for the price that we had to sell it for, kind of thing. So we went back to the drawing board, and we came up with this. So these are still stainless steel. Now it ties into the subframe. You have much more exhaust clearance. You have the same ground clearance as a Sport NB Miata. Super easy install, just 4 bolts per brace, and very, very, very stiff. Made a much bigger difference with the stiffness. This one was a struggle, frankly. It took us many tries to find a manufacturer who could make it and make it reliably. That was a challenge. We'll put it mildly. But we have an excellent supplier now. Parts are in stock. Parts work well. And actually, these welds, part of the reason they're so gorgeous, they're robotic. So that means that they're not warping. Every part that comes off is the same, all that fun stuff. So more parts here. So this is our original rear big brake kit with a parking brake. And it's awesome. Your foot brake, the rear brakes don't do a whole, they work. You need rear brakes. Please don't remove your rear brakes. But they're not doing anywhere near as much work as the front brakes. However, the 4-piston kit on the back really makes a big difference to the feel of the pedal, because you're getting rid of that flexi caliper. So I have this set up on my car, and I really, really like it because of that pedal feel. And it actually did make a big difference to my stopping ability on track. But, so it has a parking brake, which is great because it's inexpensive and easy and legal for classes and all that fun stuff, but it's not a tremendously effective rear brake, rear parking brake. So we have this setup, which gives us that exact same foot brake, foot caliper, and then also this parking brake here. So you have a real parking brake that actually will hold the car in place on a hill, and also the awesome pedal feel and easy pad swap and such of the Willwood Powerlight there. And and actually kind of vice versa, and that gives us the ability to have a drift setup, which is only kind of related, but it's always entertaining, that's for sure. Okay, and last but not least is our reroute. So this is a prototype reroute on a very ugly engine, so apologies for any appearances here. But basically, the reroute is there briefly. Water comes in at the front of the engine, kind of goes through the engine, but mostly comes back out at the front of the engine. The reroute makes it so it comes in the front, goes through the entire engine, and comes back. That's simplifying it, other videos, so on and so forth. We've sold a few different reroutes throughout the years, and they were varying degrees of good. None of them were bad. But we always felt like we could do it better. So this one is our own design rather than reselling someone else's design. And it gives us, it's a single piece housing. So again, kind of going back to the silicone hoses and potential failure points, the more junctions you have, the more likely it is that you're going to have a leak, a failure. So the fewer you can have, the better. And it, you know, fits in really well, good EGR clearance, all that fun stuff. But the biggest thing for turbo people is that the turbo water comes from this barb, but it returns to this barb. So typically, the hot turbo water returns to the engine. So basically, you take hot water, you make it way, way, way hotter in the turbo, and then you put it right back into the engine without cooling it off first. That's not good. So what this one does is takes hot water, makes it way, way, way hotter, and then puts it into the upper radiator hose to dump into the radiator to shed that heat before it goes back into the engine. So that is very helpful. That makes a huge difference. My personal car, 96 turbo, 250 horse, whatever, reroute and this setup, crossflow and stage 2 fan, it's been a magic bullet for me. It has made a gigantic difference, and I can double stint the car and whatever, it doesn't care. And I don't have any hood vents, anything else going on with it. So anyway, so that is our deal. Now again, you have questions, drop them in the comments. We will get to them. Do we have any questions now? Okay. So I printed an old version of my thing here. What do we do with, so I'm trying to remember the questions. What do we do with old parts, prototype parts, so on and so forth? So it kind of depends on the situation. If it's a prototype part, lots of times an employee will have it on their car, we'll have it on one of our FM cars. So we'll be testing it, and then once that is done, it stays on that car. Maybe we sell it to an employee cheap. Maybe it goes on our summer camp deal table. So it depends a lot based on the situation. As far as the outdated stuff, typically we will sell through that before we move to the new stuff, or we will blow out the old stuff while when we start selling the new stuff. So none of our parts are bad or cheap or wrong or whatever, but they are continuously improved. You know, all of this stuff was very, very good. We just make it that much better. So, okay, and I think what was the product that made the biggest difference or the biggest change between the two? There are a lot of different ways I could go with that one, but I'm going to say the Ninja. The original Ninja worked well, but was kind of finicky and could kind of be a headache to use, to the point where, you know, I've done a bunch of timing belts. I typically didn't use it. With the new one, I use it every time because it makes life so much easier. So I would say that would probably be the biggest difference here. If you give me enough time, I could come up with arguments for why that's not true. So I'm going to stop right there. Okay, any questions that slid in? Okay, well, I answered all the questions. Well, as always, thank you for stopping by. I hope this was an enjoyable insight into the back end of Flyin Miata and how development works and how we're always trying to have the best possible products for you guys. If you think of any questions after the fact, again, drop them in the comments, reach out to our customer support team. We'll be happy to answer those for you. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you like this stuff, that really helps us out, helps us keep making the content. And if you have video ideas, we always need more video ideas. Let us know. Okay, as always, thank you very much for stopping by. We will see you next week.